who's sure I listen to every day, I try to every day. His father was nifty yesterday. Dr. Fred Rosner was nifty yesterday. Dr. Fred Rosner was he was very close to Rav Moshe. I think he was Rav Moshe's doctor. But he was very close to Rav Moshe, and there's a lot of Torah from Rav Moshe. He was a very special guy. Anyway, we were up Daf Yudam Aleph, but I just want to share a small story that we had on Daf Testament base. We had a distinction between a Yoshev and a Ben Ir. 1 second. Is today Daf Tes and yesterday was Daf Ches? I might be a little mixed up.
Today is Ches, isn't
it? Today's Ches. Today's Tes.
I'm sorry. Today's Tes.
So on the bottom of Daf Ches, which is what we learned yesterday, we were learning about when you have to participate in the chiyuvim of a city, right? So our Mishnah said 12 months, and the Gemara had a kasha from Irani Dachas. Actually, that was on Ches Amaral. The Gemara had a kasha from Irani Dachas who were mini hachameres v'agamelas various makom im nishtoshim shloshim yon, right? So then, if they're there 30 days, then they have the din of the Irani Dachas beside from a moinim of. So Rav answered, so how did we explain that teretz? The way we explain the teretz is, in order to be liable for communal responsibilities, you have to be a benir. To be a benir, to be a citizen, to be someone who lives there, that's someone who's there for 12 months. But by Irani Dachas, it says that they kill kol yoshvei ha'ir, whoever's in that city. That is only 30 days. So there was a Meshulach who was friendly with the Chassam Sofer, and he asked the Chassam Sofer the following kasha. In Chuvas, he asked the Chassam Sofer the following kasha. In Megillas Esther, what does it say when it comes to the halachas of if you lay on the 14th or on the 15th? The Gemara Megillah says, what if a ben krach goes to an ear, or vice versa? How long does he have to be there that his halacha to participate in Kriyas Megillah is now with the ear or with the krach? Right? That's the Gemara Shaila in Megillah. The Gemara says if you're there one day, then you have to keep the day that you're there. So let's have a look. And where does the Gemara know from? The Gemara knows it from Alkeina Yehudim HaProzim HaYoshvim V'Ari HaProzos. And their Yoshvim means one day. So how could you say Yoshvim means 30 days, like it says by Irni Dachas, they killed Kol Yoshvei Ha'ir. Here, Yoshvim means one day. That was his kasha. This person's name was Chaim Baruch. This Yidden was Chaim Baruch. So this is a Bombadika kasha. And Be'etzim, this kasha is a kasha that's asked by the Shagir's Aryeh, and the Shagir's Aryeh remains in a Tzarech Yid. But this is what the Chassam Sofer said. Chassam Sofer said, it says by Irni Dachas, Kol Yoshvei Ha'ir, right? And by Megillah says, HaYoshvim Bi'arei HaProzos. There's a difference between Yoshvei Ha'ir and HaYoshvim Bi'arei HaProzos. Yoshvei Ha'ir means you're a Yoshev. Yoshvei Ha'ir means we're talking about a noun. What are you? You are a Yoshev Ha'ir. You have a title. You have a status. You're a Yoshev Ha'ir. But I use my person, my Yoshvim Bi'arei HaProzos. It's not talking about a status. It's if you happen to be in this place. So happen to be in this place is enough with one day. But to be considered someone who has a status as a Yoshvei Ha'ir, that takes 30 days. Oh, so Fear Tois. I think Rabbi Bornstein first. It says Asher Yoshvei Veisecha Od Yaluch Hasala. Right? What's a Yoshvei Veisecha? It doesn't mean punkt now he's in the Besmedrash. A person who has a status of a Yoshvei bias, a person who has a status of somebody who's a Besmedrashi. There's nothing called the Besmedrashi. He's always in the Besmedrash. He's known. You go to Mechamar, he'll be there. You go to Shachas, he'll be there. You go to learning, he's there. The Ashrei is not on someone who happens to be Yoshev in it happens to be Yoshev in the Bismarish at the time. You have to be, in order to be Ashrei, it has to be Ashrei Yoshev Vesecha. He has a status of Yoshev Bayis. That's what he fears. He always fears us with the Shmak nature. So we should be Zoichet to be Ashrei Yoshev Vesecha. Gewaltig. That's what I wanted to share. Okay, there's more stuff for today. Today, I would say, is probably one of the most X-rated Gemaras that we've ever learned. Nervos, we just reviewed not long ago when we were talking about Rav Achtavoy. We had him quoted not too long ago. We talked about this story that we're going to learn today. That I would say it's even beyond PG-13. So if anybody's at home, you might want to lower the volume. I'll warn you. I'll give you a 2-minute warning. We're on Testament Aleph. Yeah. Okay, I was on the wrong page here because I was going back a little. The Dr. Gemara. The last thing we learned was if you have a Kupa Shel Tzedakah, you don't have to have one special one for Yosh Ve'ir and a special one for any Ani, from Ani Ircha, from other Anim. Rather, you can have one and you can make a Tanai on it that you can divert it. And then Rabbi Ashi says, I don't even need to do that. When everyone gives me money, they're giving it to me to do with it what I see fit. So whatever I end up doing with it is considered an appropriate expenditure. Hani Tafri, there are the two butchers. The Avdi in Yona, Bahadi Adadi. We learned in a city, the city can get together and make up pricing, and they could make up weights and measures, and they even have a right to sanction people who don't stick to these rules, right? That's what we learned yesterday. So based on that, there were these two shaykhtim, and I also learned it was an association of shaykhtim. The Cholman, the Ovid, the Chavrei, Nekrulamosh. They had a deal going. It was like OPEC. We want to control, not to overflow the market with meat. So we were each given, amongst ourselves, we decided which day I'll shecht, and you won't shecht. And if you shechted on the day that's not yours, meaning you're infringing on the other shechet whose right day was that day, then we will go and destroy the hide. There's value in the hide of an animal when you shechted. We'll destroy that hide. That'll be the sanction. So this seems to be square in the territory of what the Bryce told us earlier, that a city can make up something and it's enforceable. It's the shechet's animal, the shechting. Yes. No. So what happened was and Avad b'yamid Chavrei. So they did the sanction on him. Now he wants to take them to the entire their massacre. You destroyed my hide. Also, look, they approached Rava. And Rava made them pay. How could they do that? The price that we quoted in the base was Ulahasiya al Kitzasam. They even have a right to sanction. So they even have a right to sanction when a city makes up. So this is an association they made up. They should have a right. Because we made up that was OPEC. We want to control the meat. Sure, we're controlling because you're selling it. You're not selling it for yourself. You're not checking it to eat yourself. No, you're a butcher. You're checking it to sell. Yeah, I didn't make that clear. Yeah. In those days, a butcher was a shechted. Yeah. In those days, the butcher was the shechted. He shechted and then he sold. I'm sorry, I didn't make that clear. Okay, so the halacha was lo yahadilei Rava. Rava did not even answer their question. We're going to have to see why in a minute. Omar Papa Shapir Avad lo yahadilei. It actually is the right thing to do. Why Rava ignored them? You know why? Hanamili didn't answer that at all. Hanamili, when do you say that an association, a city of lay leaders can make up on their own? That's Heichad Alek Adam Choshev. Al Heichad Adam Choshev, who Gerat happens to be Rava, Lav Kol Kibinayu Demas. They have no right to make these Tnoim without the Adam Choshev. So, but a way Rava was that Adam Choshev. Rava was that Adam Choshev. So Rava is going to say, no, you didn't have a right to make a Tnai, I'm the Adam Choshev. Rava couldn't say that about himself. So he just didn't answer, but Rav Papa revealed to the Olam that no, you had no right to make such a Tnai. The problem we have here is it doesn't say that in the Brisa. It says in the Brisa that the city can get together and they could make such a Tnai and they can enforce it. So where does Adam Choshev? So the Meforshim explain the only time they can make such a Tanai is if it's not hurting people. But such a Tanai that they made, which controls the supply of meat in the city, that's hurting the rabbi. So you don't have a right to make such a Tanai up amongst yourself when in fact you're going to cause the price of meat to go up. That's actually going to hurt the rabbi. Such a Tanai you never had a right to make without the Gadol paskening on it. So Rav Moshe discusses my favorite topic, unions. Are you allowed to unionize? Because that's in fact controlling something, and it's going to jack up the pricing for everybody else. So Rav Moshe has a whole shayt. Of course, it's a shayt from the 1950s, and Moshe knows about it. You are allowed to unionize. You're 100% allowed to unionize. But he says, and you're allowed to strike. But he did say that if a zoivite, if let's say somebody wants to cross the picket line, somebody doesn't want to strike, you're not allowed to threaten them, and surely you're not allowed to hurt him, because such sanctions are surely not allowed. But you are allowed to unionize, to bargain together as a bargaining group, but no sanctioning at all. That's what the Moshe Pascal about unions. I wonder if local 787 knows Rav Moshe's psak. Considering that all their lawyers are Jewish, maybe they, I don't know if they know it or not. It's either they know it because they don't follow it because they don't know it, or because they don't care. I'm not sure which one it is. Tanu Rabban, ein mechashvin b'tzedakah im gabei tzedakah. You don't do reconciliations. You don't do audits on gaboyim. You don't trust them. V'loy behektish im hagizbarim, or you don't do audits on the gizbar of hektish. V'yachol b'shein raya l'davar. Even though we don't have a raya to prove this point, zeichel l'davar, we do have a zeichel l'davar. Shenemar, and there's a little bit of a question between Rashi and Tosfos what this means. What is there no raya to? Shenemar, it says, and this is referring to the people who were dealing with the money, of the Beis HaMikdash. V'loi yichashvu esu anoshim asher yitnu es hakesef al yodam. We're not going to check the calculations and audit the people who were in charge. Loseis loisei malacha. These were the ones who dispensed the funds to the oisei malacha, to the trades that were hired. Ki be'emuna heimoisim. So it says, "V'lichashvu anoshim asher yitnu es hakesef al yodam." So let's stop here a moment and let's see what Rashi says is the raya over here. So Rashi, you know why it's not a raya? The loy b'kaboy tzedakah. That was not speaking about a gabbai tzedakah who's collecting. That person was referring to the people who are dispensing the money that already came in. El b'gizbari hektish hanois l'libam loisha malacha shapoyalam merubam l'malachas harbe. They did so many different trades to do so many different things. The schleppers, and the transport. It's impossible to keep an exact control of everything. So Rashi says, why is it any raya l'davar? You have a klor raya to a gizbar, but you don't have a raya to a gabbai tzedakah because this is speaking about a gizbar. That's what Rashi says. Tosfos says that's not what it is. Tosfos says raya gemura eina. The shiny husband showing tzaddikim gemura. Really, you could draw a conclusion from a gizbar to a gabbai, but over there, the Torah gives a special reason why you didn't have to trust them, because they were oisik geveilach tzaddikim. They knew that they could be 100% trusted. So we're saying even a regular gizbar you could trust, even if the Torah is not made on him ki be'amuna heimoisin, but nevertheless it's a zeichel l'davar that you don't audit gizbar. Zog to gemara vayter. Amar Rabbi Lozer. Even if you have a gabbai tzedakah that you could trust 100%, he's still yotzer v'yimna. You still have to count the money when you give it to them. Because it says so in the pasuk by Yatzur v'yimnu zokt. I see the pasuk inside. This is by David HaMelech, I believe. V'yal Sefer HaMelech v'Kohen HaGadol v'Yatzur v'yimnu es hakesef hanim tebeis Hashem. They counted, but they didn't do an audit. So if you're not auditing, what's the purpose of counting? So the Marsha brings down, could be, it protects you from azikim. By keeping everything clear, it protects you from azikim. He references a Gemara somewhere, but you need to count even though you're not going to audit. I always say over a story with somebody who was in Israel, and he was by the Ger Rebbe. He was an American Ger Chusid. So the Rebbe said, if you're going to America, could you do me a favor? Can you please take $20,000 from me to America? Right? So he says, sure. So the Rebbe takes out an envelope, a fat envelope of cash, and he gives it to the Yid. And the Yid takes the money and he puts it into his pocket. And as he's about to leave, the Rebbe says, "You're not counting it." So he says, "The Rebbe gave me 20,000. I think I can trust the Rebbe that there's $20,000 in there." He says, "Give me back my envelope. I'm going to send it to somebody else." Zok the Gemara weiter. Amar Rav Huna, Hayu boitkin lemezoynos. Amar Rav Huna, boitkin lemezoynos ain't boitkin luxus. If an oni comes to you and says, "I need food," you don't just take his word for it. You have to check him out a little bit. He has to have that paper. He has to have a tudah. That's right. But the ain't boitkin luxus. A guy comes to you naked, that he doesn't have clothing or with ripped, tattered clothing. That's a pretty good tudah built in. Ibayis Emer, Karar Vibayis Emisvara. Ibayis Emisvara, Hakamavazi. This guy is in a situation of bizoyin. He's not properly dressed. But even though someone who's hungry, but he's not in a situation where it's clear, it's clear humiliation for him. Ibayis Emekra. Now this is a very interesting pasuk, because if you read the Gemara, it says Haray Perosh L'Rav. Perosh means separate yourself for hungry. In other words, don't give right away. Separate yourself. Haray Perosh L'Rav Lachmecha. You should give someone who's hungry. You should give him your lechem, but it's with a shin ksiv, and therefore Perosh, first separate to clarify, to make sure that he is in fact needy, and then the other havu. The problem is, if you look at the real pasuk, you will see it says "Haloi farois l'rav lachmecha" with a samach. So how could you darshan if it was a sin? So you could darshan shin, but there's a samach. So there are those who have a very big problem with this Gemara. Some of them, there's even people who change gisois. There's a little bit of a tumult in the Rishonim how to deal with this, but we'll take the Gemara at face value. The Hasam Ksiv. And Lagabe, someone who's not properly clothed, who needs clothing, it's Kisira Orum Vichisisa. Okay, so we dash that Kisira, as soon as you see it, alter right away. So let's look at the whole pasuk. Aliporis Larav Lachmecha, Aniyim Merurim Tavi Bayis, and Aniyim Merurim will come to your house, and we'll see soon in the Gemara what that refers to. Then Kisira Araim, you see someone who's Araim right away, Vichisisa. Right away, you have to cover him up, and this is a famous line. The Gemara is going to elaborate on these zukum as well. Zog to Gemara weiter. Yehuda Amar verkehrt. It's the opposite. Boitkim luxus, vein boitkim lemezoynos. Iba yisem esvara, iba yisem akra. Iba yisem esvara. Hi kometzarle, vai like kometzarle. Someone who is hungry, he's in terrible pain. He needs to be taken care of right away. But someone who's not properly dressed, that's something that they're not an action. There might be amounts of Brazilian, but not amounts of pain, and therefore you could check it out. Or we have a pasuk. It's the same pasuk. It's just a different perspective on how to translate the pasuk. Perois means right away. Perois lalter. The moment someone approaches that needs food, give him right away. Uchidekarina. Exactly how it's read. Perois, not perois separate. And it also says there, Kisira aram v'chisisai. When you see an aram, you should cover him over. When it actually appears to you that this is legit, after you've already investigated and checked his tudah, that's when you should give him his baggage. We actually have support for Rav Yehuda. Amar kisuni boitkin aisai, parnesuni ein boitkin. So the Brisa supports Rav Yehuda that you need to show a tudah if you want clothing, but if you just want food, you don't need to show your tudah. Tanan also. Ein poichen la'ani over mimakam l'makam mikikar bepujoin me'arba sa'in besela. How much do you have to give each ani? And this sounds like it's a tamchui because it's a over mimakam l'makam. He's not even a citizen of the city. Rather, he's passing through this food. You should give him a kikar that you paid a punjin for. Now that doesn't tell us anything unless we know what money could buy. So it's me'arba soin l'sela. When 4 soin can be purchased for a sela, at that point you'll give the ani a kikar worth of punjin. Now, just for information purposes, a punjoin is 1/48th of a sela. So that would tell you that 1/48. So and it's 4 saw in besela. So it would be 1/12 of a saw. 1/12 of a saw would be the size of the kikar. 1/12 of a saw happens to be a chatzi kav, a half of a kav. But we have a kikar that's made out of a half a kav. In fact, such a kikar is only really a quarter of a kav. Why is it a quarter of a kav? Because a baker will buy a half a kav with a punjin. He's not going to bake it. He's not going to grind the wheat, prepare the flour, and then knead it and bake it, and then sell it to you for the same price that he paid for the wheat, because he's going to lose money. So he actually sells a quarter of a kav for the punjoin, and that's what you're getting. And that happens to be mozoin beisudois. And Tosfos has a whole discussion: how many sudas do you give an ani when he leaves? If it's 1 suda, if it's 2 sudas. So generally speaking, if it's during the day, you give him 2 sudas, one that he can eat right away, and the one that he'll be able to eat at night when he arrives at the place where he's going. We're talking about Avram, and for tomorrow morning, he'll already be able to get from the Tamkli in the city where he is. So, okay, long. What if he spent the night? Then you also have to give him to sleep. You give him parnosos lina. What does that mean? My parnosos lina. My papa purya, a bed, uve sadya, and a bed and a pillow. Purya, I can't even remember the name of my Rebbe, Rabbi Rosner. Look at Purya is a bed. It comes from Lashon Pur Revu, because that's what happens on the bed. So he explains that's one of the reasons for the minhagim. One of the reasons for the minhagim of turning the bed over by a base oval, we don't fear that anymore, but they used to do that, is because when someone dies, there's a tzelem elakim that is now not here anymore. So when you the tzelem elakim is created the Purya, so to show that we have we lost the tzelem elakim, that's why the bed is undone. And there are those, and I think he quoted from the Rav, you know who the Rav is, Yosy, that's the reason why we have a minute, we cover up mirrors by a Shiva house, because that's where you look at your Tzelem Elokim, right? That it represents the Tzelem Elokim, and there are those who fear Zich to actually cover pictures as well, because of that reason. Okay. Zok the Gemara weiter. Shavas, what if he's staying there for Shabbos? So you might mistakenly think that means you give him a Friday night meal, you give him a Shabbos day meal, and you give him shalosh sudas. But that's not the case, because we're talking about on Shabbos. He already got the meal from last night. So the 3 sudas are, you have to give him the suda for today, shalosh sudas, and the suda for tonight. Is how Tosfos explained it. Tana, we learned. What if he was already comfortable knocking on doors and making his own money? Then ain't his kakanoi. Then they don't have to give him from the kupa, because he's already taken care of, right? Everyone remember, I don't know if everyone remembers. Many people remember there was the version of comedy that we had when we were growing up in yeshiva was we used to listen to a comedy play that was called the Let's Take It Up. You never heard of that? That was the Chassam Sofer play. They would make a play. Well, they didn't play it on my yeshiva, that's true. But the Chassam Sofer play, they had a very good Purim play. They used to have comedy skits before the play. So one of the comedy skits was an Israeli Meshulach coming through customs, coming to America, who spoke no English, so they had to have an interpreter. They called it an interpretator. So the customs guy asked this Meshulach, what do you do for a living? So he says, "Echdrai mecharim." So the guy in English translated, he turns himself around. So the customs guy says, I don't understand, how do you make money turning yourself around? So he translates that back in Yiddish. The goy will wissen, wie kann man verdienen ein Leben nach ihm drein? So he says, "Zug the goy, darf mich nur losen nach ihm drein, du, vapur shul, ich habe schon machen ein Leben." Tell the guy he just let me turn myself around for a couple of hours here, and I'll show him how to make a buck. So who ani he was a machshel psachim. Doesn't look at Papa. He came in front of Papa. Loy mizdakikle. Papa didn't want to give him from the kupa. Papa was the garbage tzedakah. Amalei Psama Beredi Rabbi Abel or Papa. Imar loy mizdakikle. Could you imagine people see you refuse to give this guy money? Nobody's going to give him money. Inish achvida loy mizdakikle. Nobody else will. They'll say, I saw your Papa refused him. He's probably a crook. Lemos, you wanted to die of hunger because of what you did? Vatanya where Papa says, but it says Amalei, they told him, you might not give him the full suda that you would give a regular ani. Something you need to give him because otherwise no one's going to give him. Even if no one approaches you, no one needs money, you always have to give a third of a shekel a year. For tzedakah, shenemar, it says, by this is not the shkolim for the karbonis, this is money that was given for better kabayis. But madnu aleinu mitzvahs. We set up upon ourselves mitzvahs, plural. Losais aleinu shlishis a shekel l'shana. We should give a minimum of a third of a shekel per year. Lavoidas beis alekenu, and again, this is referring to better kabayis. For Rabasi, shkula tzedakah connected kol mitzvahs. Shenemar v'madnu aleinu mitzvahs. Mitzvah, singular, and ksivkan ala mitzvah. So you see, giving tzedakah is like kol ha'torah kula. Shkula tzedakah connected kol mitzvahs. Rabbi Lozer, gadol hame aseh yosy min ha'oseh. It's a greater mitzvah to cause others to give tzedakah, to solicit money greater than actually giving tzedakah yourself. Shenemar, it says in the pasuk, v'yem ma'isa tzedakah. There's actually two ways to learn this. Ma'isa tzedakah shalom. Ma'isa tzedakah is shalom. V'avodas tzedakah hashkeit v'vetach ad olam. So the question is, what is ma'isa tzedakah and what is avodas tzedakah? So let's have a look at what Rashi says. Ma'isa tzedakah is toireach ha'ma'isa ha'ma'asem es chaver. It's working hard to raise money to get other people to give. Midaloik siv. V'hoisa hatzedakah shalom. It says hama'asa tzedakah shalom. So shalom is the way Rashi learning is the ultimate. Shalom is the absolute best thing. Ve'avodas hatzedakah hashkik v'tachadaylam hashkik. It's good to have. It's good that things should be quiet, even though there might not be peace. But peace is the best. That's how Rashi Pashas learns. The Mashal brings down a different shot discussing that it's referring to giving it L'Shem Shemaim or not. So Ma'aseh Tzedakah, if you give Tzedakah on your own properly, that is Shalom, that's the ultimate. That's if you are forced to give it. Anyway, Zocha, if you're Zocha, you'll give your Tzedakah to the right place, to someone who's truly needy. Haloi, Prois Lach L'Rav Lachmecha, you'll be Zoicha to Prois L'Rav Lachmecha. And we just learned that pasuk. Let me just see what the pasuk after that is, because if you're Zoicha, you're giving to a real Ani, and we'll see there'll be advantages to that. Loi Zocha, then Vani Merudim Tavi Bayis. What Vani Merudim, poor people are going to come to your house and seize money. Who always cries poverty? Our governments. We need more tax. Give me. We don't have enough money. They're always crying. We need more money. Zokta Helig Rashi. Ani Merudim Zumam Shelas Roimi. Shesayakas Tamid Havu Shadu Trichim. Our government's always crying. We need. They piss away so much money and waste so much money, and then they say we're broke. Toronto's crying. We're broke. They made an unprecedented tax raise we had in our taxes, and now they go waste millions of dollars on renaming Dundas Square. I don't know how much money, but according to they say they're broke, always broke. So that's what Ani Merudim is. So basically, if you don't give tzedakah, taxes are going to go up. Zok to Gemara Vayter, Amalu Rabbah of Nemechuza, the Matusa Minaichu. I beg of you, Oisu Bahade Adodi, give tzedakah and get each other to give tzedakah. So then you'll have all these chusim ki heichi l'havaluchu shalva b'malchusa. Then you'll have peace. If everyone helps each other give tzedakah, everyone promises each other to give tzedakah. and everybody gives tzedakah, oh, that'll create shalom achas. From Abelazar, his man shaveis hamikdash kayim adam shekel shikloi mischaper. He brings a shekel to the base of mikdash, and that's where he receives his kabara. Achshav ain't base of mikdash kayim. Imoisin tzedakah mutav. If they do tzedakah, it'll be good. Then the goyim will come take away our money. It'll still be tzedakah. Even when they're taking the money away from you, it's still tzedakah. So you might ask, why is that tzedakah? Because a guy came and took away my money. The teretz is, if they take a lot of money from you, then they won't take so much money from the poor guy who can't afford it. So indirectly, you are subsidizing, you're paying your fair share, indirectly. Amarava, hi milsa shtoi leula. Okay, that was a 2-minute warning to lower your volume if you're not by yourself. Hi milsa shtoi leula mishagish orchasedim. This wasn't our ula. This is the person who we're referring to as someone who messed up the ways of his mother. Rashi says that we're talking about Reb Sheshes. Reb Sheshes messed up the ways of his mother, and we will soon see how. We're going to see on the Medbeis, Tosfos learns that it was not referring to Reb Sheshes, it's referring to Reb Achtavai, because we're going to have the story now that happened with Reb Achtavai and Reb Sheshes. But I just want to take a step back for a minute, because I think, where is that Gemara? I don't want to forget. No, that's already on Testament base. Okay. Zok the Hedek Gemara weiter. Zok the Gemara. Amar Rav Haimel Shtoi Ula Mishagish Urchasedim. This person, we're calling him the Ula who ruined the ways of his mother. He mixed things up because something crazy to happen with his mother. Mishmei de Rabbi Lezer, in the name of Rabbi Lezer. Ma'idich Siv, it says in the pasuk, Vayilbash. So Ula Mishagish said this in the name of Rabbi Lezer. He got a label. Can you imagine a person? His name, his label became Ula Mishagish Urchasedim. That's what they called him. The person. So it must have been a wild story if he got the name of a person who messed up his mother. Ma'idich Siv, Vayilbash Tzedakah Kishuryan. He wore tzedakah like a shield. Now a shield. This shiryan is a shield that's made out of like scales. They used to have like scales that protected them. So it was a series of small metal plates. My shiryan's just like this type of shield. Called klipa uklipa. Mitzarefes l'shiryan gadol. Every little piece of armor is part of the whole armor coat, which protects the warrior that's wearing it. Av tzedakah called pruta mitzarefes l'cheshbon gadol. Every pruta is mitzaref, and it creates around us a tremendous security. This beged is a dirty beged that had to be taken off. The lashon pasuk is, let me see if I can find the pasuk. It says in the pasuk, "Vanihika tame kulanu uchaveged idim." It's not idim. Uchaveged idim called to kosenu, meaning all of our tzidkas was like a beged idim. What it means is our tzedakahs were bad. All of our tzedakahs were nimas, machmas rishenu, because of the riches that we did, beged mos to adam asimir Allah. But we darshan this a little bit l'toif. Ma beged zeh, kol nima v'nima, mitzarefes, lebeged gadol. A beged is not solid. It's made out of a whole bunch of threads. After tzedakah, kol pruta mitzarefes, l'cheshbon gadol. So they're talking about something not good, but nevertheless, the point is that every small fiber of the item is part of its whole, and its whole combined is a very powerful thing. Zok to Gemara weiter. Amai karu lei ula mishagish urchasedim. Why did we call him? Why was he referred to as ula mishagish urchasedim? Because of the following story, and again, this is where we should lower our volume. The boy minei Rav Achtavai bar Ami Reb Sheshes. Rav Achtavai asked a shaila. Reb Sheshes, I guess he was a Talmud of Reb Sheshes. And he asked the following question: Minayin lemitzayra. We know if a mitzvah becomes a tamei muchlet, and then he becomes tahar. So the first thing that happens is they take him to Beit Hamikdash, and he brings tziparim, and he gets a haircut, and then he has to wait 7 days. Then he has to wait 7 days to come back to the Beit Hamikdash to bring the karbonos to be mitarim completely. As Rashi says, b'shivas yomim shebein taharis hatziparim lahavos karbonos. So before he even brings the Tziporim, Rashi says right away, he's Isla Shlemes, and he's Tameh even Ba'oil. So he's very Tameh. He's even Tameh Ba'oil. But during those 7 days where he's technically Tar, but he hasn't completed his Ta'ira, the halacha is he is Metama Adam. How do we know? We know that the Mitzvah is Metama Begadim because it says in the pasuk V'chibes Begadav when he ends up bringing the Karbonis, it says V'chibes Begadav. So up until that time, he was Metama Begadim. Therefore, Metama Adam. So if he's Metama Begadim, he'll also be Metama Adam. Amalei. So Rav Achtavai asked him, who said, Dilma Tuma Bechiburim Shiny. Maybe Tumas Begadim is different. Rashi says maybe it's because he's wearing those begadim. Tosha doesn't like that shot, so Tosha maybe begadim you could be metama. Why? The hizit nevela. If you stand on something that moves in nevela, so you stand on a wooden board and there's nevela underneath it, and it moves in nevela, you become tamei, and your begadim become tamei, the metama begadim, but then metama adam, but you wouldn't be metama person. So how could you couple being metama begadim to being metama adam? You see, there are people. There are Thomas that you're Matama Begadim and not Adam. So you can't tell me that a Mitzvah automatically is Matama Adam because we know it's Matama Begadim. Amalei, so Sheshes answered back, Vela Sheretz, the Matama Adam in Adam. Based on your logic, where you can't assume anything that's Matama Begadim and Matama Adam, so how do you understand how a Sheretz could be Matama Adam? Lav Bishum the Matama Begadim? Amalei, no. Sheretz Bedik Sivvei. By Sheretz is a puzzle that tells us the failures that a Sheretz is Matama Adam. Says ish asher yiga b'chol sheretz. So Rav Sheshes said, okay, so how about shich v'zera, the metama adam minala? How do you know that if someone touches shich v'zera, he's metama, it becomes tummy? Lav mishum the hoilu metama begadim metama adam isn't also because we know it's metama begadim. Amalei, so Rav Achtavai said no. Shich v'zera nami v'hedik sivbei ish l'rabbis esonegeya. But I had to leave it b'dichus. When Rav Achtavai was responding to Rav Sheshes, he did it in a little bit of a mocking tone. It was not with the proper cover to Rav Sheshes. So Rav Sheshes became upset. Cholish started Rav Sheshes. And what happened was Ishtik Rav Achtavoi Bar Ami. He became mute. He was no longer able to speak. B'siyaka Talmudah, and he forgot his learning. Now, this is a crisis. So Asi Ime, his mother came. Now, Rashi learns Asi Ime to Rav Sheshes. The mother of Rav Sheshes came to be an advocate for Rav Achtavai. Tosfos learns that it's not Rav Sheshes who's the Meshagas Urcha De'imei, it's Rav Achtavai who's Meshagas Urcha De'imei, and it's Rav Achtavai's mother who came. The Kabachi Kamei, and she was crying in front of Rav Sheshes. Tzavcha, tzavcha v'lo yashkeva. She was crying to him, heal him, be mindful him, and he wouldn't listen. Amr Lei, so what she did is she pulled off her top. She literally pulled off her top. And she told him, Chazu lahani kaji, check these out. That's not much what he said. Check these out. The matzitz minayu, you yourself should recognize them because you drank from them. So if it's Rav Sheshes' mother, she nursed him. If it's Rav Achtavai's mother, Rashi says could be that she was the wet nurse of Rav Sheshes. So at that point he couldn't say no anymore. Bo rachmei alei v'itzi. So this is a wild story. That's why it's called Mashaka Shima, because he caused, either Rav Sheshes caused or Rav Achtavai caused, that his mother should go topless, literally, and use those to convince Rav Sheshes to forgive him. So that's a Pashup shot. But the Ben Yada says something very interesting. Sometimes if someone's a Gilgal of something else, it's called the person who comes from a Gilgal. The Gilgal is referred to as my mother. So Mashagashima could mean he messed up his Friyadika Gilgal. And Dr. Ben Yada, Rav Sheshes was a reincarnation, was a Gilgal of Bava ben Buta, who we just had a couple of days ago. Now, Bava ben Buta was an extremely patient and calm person, because even though Amelia Bedelia busted those two lamps on his head, I call her Amelia Bedelia because of that whole story where she didn't understand her husband, even though she busted those two lamps on his head, he didn't say a word. He said, Shalom Bayis. He accepted it. So, and using at bash, Bava actually spells Sheshes, right? Because Beis is the second letter of the alphabet, and Shin is the second last letter of the alphabet. and Tov is the last letter of the alphabet, and the Aleph is the first. So Reb Sheshes was a Gilgul of Bava Vebuta, and Mishagesh Urchadeime means here Reb Sheshes had a Hakbad. Bava Vebuta was the last. Hakbad was so far from him, so he messed up the ways of his mother, meaning of his Friedrich Gilgul, because he went against that nature and he had a Hakbad. That's what the Ben Yehoyada says. Unbelievable. So Zok to Gemara, Lamaisi, you have a good child. How taka do you know that a mitzvah b'meisi purai? How do you taka know that he is mitama adam? Who do also know law? We know. Lamaisi, how do you know? Kidatanya. Abshir ben Yochi Emar Nemar kibus begadim b'meisi purai. It says that he has to wash his beged when he brings the tziporim, right at the beginning when he starts the process. But Nemar kibus begadim b'meichalutai when he becomes tamei originally. Malalon mitame adam, just like a mitzvah is mitame adam when he's chalot, when he becomes condemned to tuma. Afkar mitame adam. Toy says it's not mamish, shav or hekish, because we don't learn all halachas about these two people like are similar. It's limited to this halach. Amar Belazar, gadol ha'oiseh tzedakah b'seiser yoser mi Moshe Rabbeinu. The mitzvah of giving tzedakah b'seiser makes you even greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. I was afraid of both af and chema, which are two very bad things, different expressions of anger. Matan b'seiser yichva af. Giving a matan b'seiser will cover over, will contain the af. V'shoichad b'cheik chamo az. And the matan will also cover over chamo aza or chema aza, a great anger. Okay, why is shoichad? Why is tzedakah referred to as shoichad? Because we know that when you give tzedakah, it's like giving shoichad to the Rebbeinu Shalom kavayachol, and that's why we get a tremendous rotz in front. It's up to Marshal. Well, Pligid Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak, af koifer, but chema eina koifer. It's not able to overcome chema. Shenemar v'shoichad b'cheik chema aza, and unlike the way we learned it up until now, that matam b'seiser is the heading, and it's koifer everything else, yichva af and chema aza. He reads the pasuk differently. He reads the pasuk v'shoichad b'cheik chema aza af apisha shoichad. Even though you gave shoichad, even though you gave him matana, still b'cheik chema aza. The chema aza, this chema aza, there's still going to be chema there. In other words, it will not solve that problem, which means that he's no better than Moshe Rabbeinu. Then let me see. Rashi over here. Afagash shoichet b'cheik shu oiset tzedakah b'seisus. So I didn't read it right. It's afagash shoichet b'cheik and shoichet b'cheik kama chema aza. There's still a great anger. Afagash b'cheik chema aza. Igadami amir b'torah called. So that's one shot. Meaning he's no better than Moshe Rabbeinu, because Moshe, Toshes asks actually, which the Mashos is not a kasha, it's really a tos, a tfus, and Toshes is bringing down that it's brought down that Moshe was able to eliminate chema. There's a Gemara that brings down Moshe was able to eliminate chema. So if Moshe eliminated chema, but not af, if you could eliminate both matam b'seiser, then you're greater than Moshe. But if you could only eliminate af, and Moshe could only eliminate chema, you're not greater than Moshe. Right. So that's what the Mashal speaks of. Zok Gemara Basra. Ikadami Amr Bitzchok called Dain Shenoitel Shoichad. So Shoichad here literally means a bribe. Maybe Chema Azaloilim. It brings a tremendous Chema to the world when a Dain is corrupt. Shenemar b'Shoichad b'Cheik Chema Aza. Remember Bitzchok. Kol Anoishim Pruta La'ani. If someone gives a pruta to an ani, if someone has money and he gives the ani, Misbarach b'Sheish Brachas, he'll be Zoichad the 6 brachas. But what if a person doesn't have money and he just excuses himself, but he gives the ani words of encouragement? Misbarach b'Yud Aleph brachas. Tosha says b'Feirish, that only means if he doesn't have money. If he has money and he's b'Fayis, that he doesn't get such a big bracha. Hanoitzim prut l'ani misbarach b'Sheish brachas halido. We had that pasuk a couple of times. Where's the bracha? So we have to kisir aram. So where do you see the bracha? We have to look into the bach for the bracha. So the bach brings down the rest of the pasuk. Luksiv oz yibaka kashacher ayrecha. So I'm going to count, see if I can get the count. Your light will split the morning. I guess we'll push away the darkness. And whenever there's a problem, you will get a quick refuah. Your tzidkas will go in front of you and protect you from everything. Kavod Hashem yasvecha, the kavod Hashem will save you. Uchsiv os tikra v'Hashem yana. Whenever you cry, Hashem will answer. Tishaveya, which is number 6. V'yomer hinei. Because Baruch Hu is basically going to answer your tefillos right away. And the Faisib Advarim Misbarach be'achas esribachas Shnemar v'tavik l'rav nafshecha v'nefesh nenet hasbiyah, and then you'll be zoicha to the following: v'zorach b'choshech oirecha, your light will shine in the darkness. V'afeilascha ketzarayim, and the Mashal explains what these psukim means is v'zorach b'choshech oirecha, when everybody's suffering, when there's a bad time for Klal Yisrael, your light's going to shine. You won't suffer with everybody else. And even if you have a little bit of an concern, a little bit of difficulty, Kitzarayim, it'll quickly brighten up, and your problems will go away. Hashem will always be resting with you to protect you from everything. And you'll always have whatever you need. I want to read the pasuk inside because there's a beautiful brachas, and why shouldn't we mention them? B'peh molei, and then daven to Hashem that we should be zoichet them. So let's see what it says in the pasuk over here. V'nachach Hashem tamid v'sbia b'tzachtzachos nafshecha v'atzmoisecha yachlitz, your bones will heal up, will be strong. You will be like a field that has a steady state of irrigation, and therefore it's always moist and juicy and productive and healthy. Like finding a source of water that will never, ever, ever dry up. And because you stick to the mitzvahs of the Rebbeinu Shloim, because of you, we'll be able to be miyasid churbanos. So because of you, we'll rebuild Yiddishkeit that could have been destroyed during bad times. And therefore, moiste dar vadar tekoimim, you will rebuild the moistes of the Friedrich Kedaris, and therefore everybody will consider you as the saviors of the generation. The Karelecha Goyder Peretz, you'll be the one who stopped the Peretz of Klal Yisrael because you held on to the mitzvahs, and Hashem gave you the koyach that you were able to rebuild Klal Yisrael. Mishoyvev nesivos lashonos. So these are beautiful brachas. Meaning, if a person gives tzedakah, or a person is mafayis and ani, he'll end up, he couldn't give tzedakah, but he tried to help the ani, he'll end up having so much money and so much opportunity that he'll be able to literally be the king of Klal Yisrael and rebuild Klal Yisrael, and always be in a good situation to be able to help others, even if everybody else might be going through a difficult time. So we should all be zoichet to this bracha b'karv mamish. Zok more weiter. Rabbi Yitzchak Meidach Siv Roidev Tzedakah v'Chesed Yimatzei Chayim Tzedakah v'Chavod. I understand why a Roidev Tzedakah v'Chesed should find Chayim, but why should he find Tzedakah? Why should he need Tzedakah? Right? Frankly, the Roidev Tzedakah Yimatzei Tzedakah. I'd rather not find tzedakah. I'd rather not need tzedakah. If someone doesn't have money and he can't give tzedakah, but he runs around trying to raise money to help other people, Hashem will give him money that he'll be able to give his own tzedakah soon. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu Kadosh Baruch Hu Mamsiloi b'nei Adam hamehugonim lasois lahen tzedakah kidei lakabel en tzarei. If someone likes to give tzedakah, for right about tzedakah, you know what Kodesh Baruch Hu do? Many aniyim are crooks. They're scams. Hashem's going to make it that you should get tzchar. Why? Because you'll be zoicha to give your money to aniyim who really need them, and not the scam artists. Lafukim in the Dorish Rava. The Dorish Rava Meidach Siv. This was an ani. This was a novi who was very upset at his generation. So I think it's Yirmiyah. Yirmiyah Novi was angry at the people of Anasais. So he cursed because they wanted to kill him. So he cursed them, and he said, "Shalom l'fanecha, be'esapecha asay bahem." What is it? What do you mean? Amar Yirmiyah l'fnekos Baruch Hu Rebbeinu Shalom. I feel b'shah Shekayvnis Yitra, even in the individual moments where they have a little bit of rachmanis, and therefore mavakshin lasosh tzedakah lefanecha, hachshilaim b'vnei adam shenim uganim, let them give their tzedakah to people who aren't worthy. Kedei shelo yikabel aleim tzach. The problem is, if you give tzedakah with the right intention, and point the guy who took it from you was a crook, you don't get schar. Yavadi, you do get schar. So Rabbi Chanan Wasserman at the end of his Kovet Shurim discusses certain minyanim, and he discusses this there, and he says, when you give tzedakah, you actually, two things occur. One thing that occurs is you're following the mitzvah of Kodesh Baruch Hu. But the other thing that occurs is that you're actually making a tikkun in the world. It actually has a positive impact on the world. It creates a special eis ratzon in the world. That only happens if you actually gave someone legit. But the mitzvah of following the mitzvah of Hashem, that you'll get anyway. And there's enough community between the two. For instance, the Avos who were Mekayim the Torah before they got the mitzvahs, they only got the other component. They got the component that they're doing something that's good for the world. They're improving the world. They're the mitzvah. But they didn't do the Ratzon Hashem because there was no Tzivah Hashem yet. Right? So that's where it would be Nageya. So over here, even though they still have the mitzvah and they get the mitzvah, but they don't have that extra mila of being misak in the world of bringing a shas ratzon there. They won't get the special ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu for giving tzedakah, and that's what Jeremiah was telling them. Zoktim about Rabbi Shub ben Levi Amar Kol HaRogel Lasis Tzedakah. Someone gets tzedakah, and Rogel Lasis Tzedakah means he can't afford to give a lot of tzedakah, but he at least tries to help other people. Zoicha that having leibonim balei chachma. This Bach takes it to Zoicha. Having leibonim balei chachma, halav talmidei chachamim children, balei oisher wealthy children, balei agada people who are darshan good speakers, balei chachma dechsev yimotzei chayim, and Rashi says ki motzei motzei chayim. So you see chayim is referring to Torah. Balei oisher dechsev tzedakah, balei agada dechsev v'kavoid. Someone who can darshan, Rashi saying darshanim, that brings them covered. Okay, we'll stop here. Hashem will do tomorrow.